Welcome back to yet another edition of the I Prefer the 80s and 90s Sports Podcast editorial where I, Richard Harris, talk about the world of sports and why I prefer the 80s and 90s sports to today. Today's topic is Major League Baseball playoffs. And it's a little bit odd topic for me. When I was a kid, my favorite teams stunk. Until I became a teen, they got good. The Mets of the 70s, horrible. The Mets of the 80s, the first part of the 80s, rebuilding and got really good. All the way to the end from 1983 to the 1990. The Yankees in the 70s started out not so much. Then, late 70s, they were the rage. Early 80s, they were the rage. And then they fell off hard. But the one thing the Mets and the Yankees did not do in the 80s, they did not quit. They played their butts off. And very, very rarely, see, baseball's changed so much over the last 40-something years, in that things of the 80s, they're trying to bring back into vogue, but the 90s is when baseball sort of catapulted into what my blog is about today. In the 80s, teams did make trades to help get their teams over the top to get into the postseason. Whether it was small trades, big trades, teams made moves to go for the win. And that started in the late 80s and has carried through to today. Today, what bothers me more than anything in the world is when I watch the baseball games and I see former Met pitchers, former Met hitters contributing to teams that are still playing in the postseason. Or seeing former Met players who were part of trades in previous years contributing to teams that are still playing. Where I mean, Wheeler, I believe, was a free agent. The Mets and the Phillies didn't make a trade, so can't be mad at him being a free agent, but the Mets should have tried to sign him. They didn't. The Mets didn't try to sign Taijuan Walker. And there could be a story somewhere saying that they did and those players refused it. And he's on the team. He's on the Phillies with Wheeler. I'll look over Toronto. Bassett was with the Mets last year as well. People wonder why we go from being a 70-something and 80-something win team this year to last year we were a 100-win team, 101 wins. But all of our assets are gone. I'm not even talking about DeGrom. DeGrom was hurt a lot last year. Scherzer to Texas. Now he's hurt now with Texas and probably won't pitch again rest of the season. But he went to help Texas and he helped Texas win some games, got them into the playoffs. Verlander. We made a big deal about getting Verlander. $43 million we paid him. He's in Houston. And he's pitched brilliantly in his last 3 starts. I think he's got like 24 innings, 26, 28, 22 innings, and only giving up 1 run, including his last start where he went 8 innings and didn't give up any runs. Then you got Canha. Canha's batting cleanup for the Brewers. And in less games with the Brewers, he has better stats in terms of home runs and RBIs. Batting average is understandable, but home runs and RBIs? Tommy Pham is playing for the Diamondbacks, batting third. I mean, I don't get what the world we did. We gave away players that are helping teams win. And I think about the 80s and the 90s. First of all, in the 80s, we didn't give away anybody. In the 80s, we were the team. It was Oakland and us, Boston as well. And we never gave away nothing. They never gave away nothing. They collected pieces, but we never gave away anything. We added pieces to keep the run going, and they just didn't get it done. We added Frank Viola. We added Brett Saberhagen. They just were just names. We added John Franco. Just names. Now, we lost Kevin Mitchell, but Kevin Mitchell wasn't really the stud player for the Mets that he ended up being for San Francisco. And of course, in the 90s, losing Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry, if they had stayed with the Mets, they would have died because they were having so much fun off the field. They would have died. No doubt in my mind. I mean, the culture of the Mets off the field was crazy. We've all seen the documentary. And we've seen their documentaries. But there's no doubt in my mind that if they had not left the Mets, we'd be talking about them, we'd be eulogizing them. But we lost pieces. And the sad part is that Gooden and Strawberry went to, of all teams, the Yankees. Gooden went to Cleveland first and helped Cleveland actually beat the Yankees in a postseason series. And Straw, he went to the Dodgers, which is, his home base here in LA. Electrified them for a little while, but didn't get him a championship. Then he goes to the Yankees and wins a couple more. And I mentioned Oakland and I mentioned Boston. Jose Canseco actually played for the Yankees too. And I almost want to say he played for the Red Sox too. And so you say, so what you're saying? What I'm saying is, when we were the Rage, we didn't give up nobody. We didn't quit. We played hard. We won. We didn't win a world championship every year, but we were in the mix. What happened this year with the Mets was a disaster. And now the manager is gone. At first, the story was that he was stepping down as manager. And then the next day it said he was fired as manager. And the Mets brought in their own brand new GM type. And he's hoping to rejuvenate the base, but he's got some pieces to do it with. But it's sad. Rosario and Jimenez, Rosario's been traded twice now. He's on the Dodgers, playing for the Dodgers in the postseason when the Dodgers start later this week. Jimenez and Rosario played for Cleveland last year in the playoffs. And actually, Jimenez has won Gold Gloves. We haven't had a steady second baseman since he's been gone. And it's only been 2 years, but Jeff McNeil is a utility guy who can rake. And they put him in the outfield most of the season this year, and he had a terrible hitting year. And the Yankees are usually buyers at the All-Star break. They ain't buy anything this year. They let go Donaldson, and now Donaldson's playing in the playoffs for Milwaukee. It's like a reversal of fortune. And that's why I get offended when I hear people talk about how the new rules of the game was so good this year. Because it wasn't so good this year. And I'm not going to go on a rant about it forever. But Scott Van Pelt last night was talking about how the games are faster. That's the only thing he was talking about was the faster games. And of course, his team, the Baltimore Orioles, had the best record in baseball. And excuse me, best record in the American League. And so, of course, he's happy. He had his manager on, talking to the manager. But if you're a Met fan, if you're a Yankee fan, if you're a Padre fan, if you're a Cardinals fan, if you're an Angels fan, and you're sitting there analyzing what happened this past season, you bring up injuries and you bring up rule changes. Y'all couldn't stop the run and y'all didn't run. And I'm watching the playoffs yesterday, and that was the first thing they were talking about in the Brewers and the Diamondbacks game. These teams run. And Arizona, I mean, they kept stealing bases. It wasn't as funny. They kept stealing bases and not scoring runs. So they say, you know what? We can't steal no runs. We're just going to hit home runs. And so they started hitting home runs. And they did, and they won. And I also told you the other thing, too. I said, look at the crowd. How will America react to the teams that are in the playoffs? Tampa Bay had less than 10,000 fans there. They had more empty seats than people sitting in seats for a playoff game. They had to pan the camera away so not to see the empty seats. But that's not my blog. My blog today is about how the Mets quit this year. The Yankees didn't quit. The Yankees just were injured. The Yankees had Rizzo was hurt, Stanton was hurt, Severino was hurt. He came back, wasn't the same guy. Rodon was hurt, and he tried to come back. He wasn't the same guy that they signed for all that money. The only person that performed was Garrett Cole. Aaron Judge performed when he played, but he wasn't there. And he still hit 37 home runs. And I still won't get over Pete Alonso's season. Pete Alonso hit 46 home runs, drove in 117 runs. That is MVP. But it wasn't MVP. In fact, he may not even be in the top 6 because he batted to 220. Because you got to figure Acuna's going to win. Betts is going to come second. Olson's going to come in third. Freeman's going to come in fourth. Maybe Alonso comes in fifth. Maybe Trey Turner comes in fifth. When he got hot, the Phillies got hot. But my beef is just awkward watching postseason games, watching my pitchers, watching my hitters play for other teams, and watching them do well, watching them win. Wheeler last night was spectacular. I mean, Tommy Pham, he didn't hit a home run, but he was, he's in the lineup. Canna, he's in the lineup. And they're going head to head, so one of them's going to win, one of them's going to lose. Next week, Rosario will be playing some part for the Dodgers. And of course, Verlander is going to pitch one of the first 2 games for Houston. Now, he's not technically a Met because he didn't really play a full season with us. But he pitched for us this year, and he actually was pitching well when they traded him. And I love Scherzer. I went to see the Mets Dodgers this year, and Scherzer got ejected. And then who's pitching for the Dodgers? Ex-Met, Noah Syndergaard, who's bouncing around the league now because he can't get nobody out. But it's bothersome. And we weren't like that in the 80s and 90s. We were solid. We had great teams. People wanted to play for the Mets. Even though they hated the Mets, people wanted to play. And so I'll be watching these playoffs with the volume off because I don't want to celebrate anybody's victory because I don't particularly like any of the teams. I'm sad that my team picked apart like they're a carcass on the side of the road. And all I can do is look forward to next year and hope and pray that we have the remainder of this decade to be a team that is in the fight and not letting and not providing for other teams that are in the fight. And that we're playing for titles and not watching them.